I think the electric car of the future needs to get worse.
No.
Yes, my thesis is quite simple. I believe that Europe has made a fundamental strategic mistake by assuming that the modern electric car should be able to go 800 kilometers, have 500 horsepower, fast charge in just 10 minutes, have screens all over the interior, and then, quite absurdly, weigh 2.5 tons.
Well, but it has to get better. Of course, the electric car has to get better and better.
But with all that, how can ordinary people afford it?
That's another question.
So my thesis today, as I said, is that if Europe is to be able to build an electric car for ordinary people, it has to get worse. Hello and welcome to the car podcast Varför, Därför, with me, your host, Felix Björklund, here at the wheel today.
Alex Rudling.
As usual, but what are you sitting behind?
It feels a little bit like an Alpine and a little like a Renault 5, but it is just a bit more spicy.
Let's have a look at the Alpine A290.
That's the name, yes.
Exciting.
Yes, and you've grown a bit of a mustache for today's lesson.
The summer mustache is on.
Yeah, I think we should put a picture of your mustache in the podcast description. For those of you who aren't watching, who are just listening.
Yep.
Yeah, lovely.
Lovely. Today we're going to take a look at the future of the electric car and share my honest opinion that for regular people to be able to afford one, it really has to become a bit worse and, quite frankly, a lot simpler. So my first question to you, Alex, is would you buy a new electric car for 250,000 if it only goes 25, 30 miles, has 120 horsepower, maybe accelerates from 0 to 100 in 10 seconds and fast charges at 100 kilowatts? Lacks electric seats, panoramic glass roof and extra screens, 20-inch rims and stuff like that.
Leap motor T03.
Yes, something like that.
If I just need a second car to drive around the city every day of the week. But if I need a car for my family and I only have one car in the family, no way in hell.
If we were to scale up the T03 and then say that it is, well, it's really quite similar to a Golf Estate.
Yes.
But with only 300 kilometers of range, you have just 120 horsepower. It does not fast charge that quickly.
I can live without the horsepower. I would probably have to see over 300 kilometers of WLTP range before I'd even consider buying a family car, actually.
But when did 300 kilometers become bad? Because I'm thinking like this, the times you drive 300 kilometers or sit for 3 hours behind the wheel, how often is that really? I mean, haven't we ended up in this situation where we let the extreme cases dictate what we demand? That we should be able to drive to TURE, that we should be able to drive on continental vacations without ever needing to stop, Is that it? The main part of how we use cars is still in everyday life, and there are very few who drive 300 kilometers in their daily life.
Yes, that's it. But look at what kind of cars we've been driving around in Sweden. We want big, spacious, safe cars, partly because Volvo has built them for us. But everyone is optimizing for the fact that I shouldn't have to rent a car when I'm going on vacation or going to the summer house or taking the train when I'm going somewhere. I want to be able to use my car. I buy a car, I'm going to use it for everything I need to do. There's a logic to that too. I think. And then we want worse stuff. Everything, the entire evolution of the earth has been moving towards things getting better and better. Everything has to get better. And then all of a sudden I'm supposed to get things that are worse and worse. That just goes against everything. It's terrible.
Yeah, but what if you get a better price tag for this? I mean, when we joke about all these things that cost so much, like, can't we just accept a range of 300 kilometers instead of 500, 700, 800, Is it those last ones? Are those the ones that are needed?
I would probably rather buy a 3-year-old car that gets 400 kilometers WLTP, honestly, than a brand new one for the exact same money that only gets 300.
But I mean, couldn't it be like this? Now I'm going to stick my neck out a bit. Isn't this 700 kilometers of range? Isn't that a bit more like back in the old days when a car was supposed to go 300 kilometers per hour? It feels like it's sort of, a bit of a penis extension rather than something that normal people actually need or even really care about, honestly.
Yes, but I think that 30, 40 miles WLTP, that means maybe 25 miles in the winter sometimes. Somewhere around there is probably the limit, I think, for what you can. I mean, you're going to visit grandma and it's 250 kilometers. Do you have to charge once? Then it's come on now. So you've spent 500,000 on a car that doesn't even make it there. Or maybe there's a charging queue or whatever it is. I mean, we like our comfort. Evolution gives us better things that we should, more comfort, more convenience. We should have it better and better. We are set on having it better. We can't keep going on like this. This whole backlash against electric cars has been partly because we've been getting worse things. A bunch of boring screens and the quality feel has become cheaper. The range has actually become shorter. It has become, in other words, worse products to use in everyday life.
Yeah.
Partly.
At the same time, we have been pushing with these. If we take just, let's stick to range, that it has resulted in enormous batteries, big heavy cars. We have unfortunately lost so many of these simpler cars that we actually always used to buy in Europe before. It is a shame.
But not out in Europe, not in, and with Sweden. When did we buy small cars in Sweden? The Volkswagens, when they came, and the Saab V4, absolutely. There weren't any big, nice cars back then. Back then, it was like the VW Beetle was a people's car for a while.
Yeah, but Sweden has also very much been defined by what Volvo's model range, that's actually what Sweden buys. And then the others have almost had to adapt to that. I was thinking of moving on.
Yes, do that.
It's not just range we're going to discuss.
Exciting to see what we come up with.
Yes, if we then take this whole idea about how all cars have so much power today, go back to the 90s or the 2000s. A Volvo 245 had 120, 130 horsepower, 124 to 130 horsepower. I think that many cars were actually around that range. If you look at the smaller cars, they really only had about 50 or 60 horsepower.
Yes, absolutely. They didn't weigh anything either.
No, not at all, and everything. But now it has become like this if you look at today's cars. A standard family car with 400 horsepower in it. A Volvo X60 has that. If you look at perhaps more, many of these newer Challengers can have 600 horsepower in a family car. What is that really? The power is enormous and it's unnecessary.
It's completely unnecessary, a bit fun, but it was like everything, almost everything in the electric car world that has sort of moved forward since Tesla arrived. Everyone has imitated Tesla, and Tesla figured out that we can put these motors in. It doesn't consume that much more energy. They don't cost that much more money to manufacture. So you can get a car that is incredibly fast for almost no extra cost. Why not? If it doesn't cost more, I'll take it, right?
But it wasn't or isn't. I mean, now I'm thinking if we go back to when Tesla, so to speak, with the Model S took on the entire car world, it was really all about the fact that for them, it was just a total wow moment. They were going to win on the drag strip. They were going to win that. Elon Musk looked and said, but what do car nerds care about the most? Yeah, well, it's 0 to 100. Yeah, I'll take that. Click will take that. Because it actually does drive some cost with other inverters. It's more expensive batteries and things like that. So there are costs associated with it.
There are costs, definitely. Actually, I think the worst cost for regular people is the insurance cost. I'm with you on that. It's just crazy that we should have cars with 500 horsepower and then they should cost $1,400 a month to insure. That just doesn't work.
No.
So that part, I'm on board with that. But I don't think people are buying these cars just because they have 400 horsepower. It's really not the main reason. I think they're fine with 252. No problem.
But if we then push my theory that they should be worse, do you need a compact, like a Golf class car? Do you need more than 150 horsepower in that?
Depending on the weight, but say 200, then we're, and it won't be a big cost if it has 150 to 200 horsepower. I don't think so. So, say 200 horsepower in a modern electric car is plenty.
Is it relevant that it can accelerate from 0 to 100 in under 6 seconds?
No, that's not needed. Under 9, I think. We're a bit spoiled there, so okay.
So what happens if we limit the top speed to a maximum of 120, just like we have on Swedish roads?
That's a big question, of course. I think people will just dismiss this instinctively. I don't want to buy something that is worse or something that is limited. I want to be able to do as I please. I really want to be able to overtake on a road up there when I'm going somewhere. And if I have a car that goes at 120, maybe I just can't overtake that car in front of me in a safe way, which is a real concern. So no, I don't think 180, which Volvo uses, is fine any day of the week. I never need to drive faster than 180 unless I happen to be on a racetrack or in Germany.
If you look at today's cars, like an electric car 2.5 tons, 500 horsepower, many people say like this, it is the technical advancement, but isn't it a bit of a technical failure? I mean, a design failure? Or what do you say?
All development is moving towards things getting better and better. It should have a longer range. It should go faster. It should charge faster. It should be quieter. It should have more connectivity. It should be safer. You name it, everything has to get better. You can't keep developing things that get worse either. Who wants to welcome the absolute worst car on the market here?
No, but it's not really like many of these parameters we've listed actually make the car better in the real world. Doesn't it just become a bit of a pointless paper exercise? I mean, take a look at how many electric cars have these things on paper. They have the power, they have the acceleration, but they don't have the chassis for it, and they don't have the brakes for it either. The car is behaving quite unsafely right now whenever you try to use these specific features that you've actually bought.
Yes, absolutely. A car must be able to deliver and handle the brakes and have road holding and everything else for what it can deliver as standard, of course. There are probably quite a few cars that haven't really lived up to that. And then I also think that regular family cars don't need to be that fast. There's no reason for it. I don't think so.
Okay.
I'm with you there, definitely.
Now, I was thinking about introducing a specific action item here. Shall we go ahead and do a quick who takes what breakdown to clarify? Or what does Alrik dare to remove?
Okay, sure.
If you were to cut $100,000 from the price tag of an electric vehicle today, or from a modern electric car, what would you get rid of?
The first thing is the glass roof.
The glass roof, okay.
That is simply not right. It weighs a lot and it can easily break. I get no joy from it. The cabin gets hotter, the car just becomes less torsionally rigid. It's typical Tesla. Everyone has to copy Tesla, and they thought it was cool because they could do it, but it was completely useless.
Yeah, if we have a list here. Electric seats?
No, I don't need that.
Electric tailgate?
I don't need that.
Panoramic glass roof, already said that. A head-up display?
I don't need that.
Premium sound, is that something you...
I don't need that.
Passenger screen, which many are doing?
Oh no, definitely not. Completely useless. If I'm riding with you, I want to talk to you. Don't sit looking at something else. And if you have to look at something, you can look at your phone. That's what people do on planes.
But when I'm sitting on this 700-kilometer trip, can't I just look at this instead of talking to you?
No. We are supposed to spend time together. That's what works in a family. In my family, we are supposed to spend time together.
What about a 360-degree camera then?
That's where I was at. I at least want a reversing camera, at least reversing and front camera. I think that's being spoiled because I don't have that in my old C70. That's actually almost the only thing I miss in that car.
Big rims then?
No, that's nonsense. It's for sports cars, absolutely, but for family cars, no, it's an abomination. Low profile and horrors. It just gets expensive to replace, offers worse comfort, and is worse at everything except on a racetrack. So it's completely useless.
Adaptive suspension or adaptive chassis?
I don't need that either. It has worked fine to drive, as I said, with Volvos, managing without that. Anyway, I don't miss it for a day. Unless I'm out buying a nice, luxurious, this car, wow, I'm buying the best car I can find. Then I'd want a lot of these things, of course.
Now we're in cutting mode here.
We are in cutting mode. I'm cutting out all weird suspension settings.
What do you say about four-wheel drive then?
I really don't need it. There are certainly people who live up in places where there is heavy snow and such. So I think, well, they can buy nice cars or something capable. Personally, I don't really need four-wheel drive, but there are many who truly need it for various practical reasons. So maybe it should be available as an option anyway for a family car.
Fast charging over 200 kW?
Somewhere around that range, maybe 200. Honestly, if it can handle 200 or even 250 steady, then yeah, I'm definitely on board with that. But I can't buy a nice new car that I'm going to keep for many years. It should be available everywhere, and yet I wouldn't be able to charge if I'm going on a long trip. Having to wait 40 minutes, that's not okay. So I think a little over 250, that's acceptable to me.
And then consider the range. Could you imagine cutting down from 70 to 50 for 100,000?
70 WLTP to 50 for 100,000. Yes, gladly. I'd happily have LFP batteries, meaning cheap, slightly heavier batteries that you can charge to 100% all the time, which are more durable. So I can definitely go down in battery performance if they take up more space. So that is perfectly fine, and I would gladly do that.
Okay, 50 to 30 then, for 100,000.
Have I cut 200,000 krona already now?
No, but I'm just saying it like this, that if it were the case that it was the car minus this, and then instead of it going 50, it would go 30, and you would end up at your...
That could work, provided it's not being used as your only family car. I can't handle having 30 WLTP because it will be barely 20 in the winter. Then it's 18 in the winter. I can't justify buying a new car for that.
Let's say it manages 250 kilometers in the winter then. Are you home then?
30 and it's a deal.
How many times in the last year have you driven 300 kilometers straight in the winter that wasn't for testing purposes?
It happens quite a few times when I go to Karlstad. Then I drive exactly 300 kilometers. I think it is really nice not to have to stop. I might make a super quick bathroom stop or buy something, but I really do not want to stand there and find a charger and mess around with that, hope it works and get it started. I am at 300 kilometers, so I find it quite annoying.
But now that we've brought it up like this, because I actually consider myself okay with these, I can accept a 300 kilometer car without any problems. But the discussion ends up a bit like this. It's easy to say that you want all these things. You can accept these, but do you think people will buy the car we've developed now? It doesn't have a panoramic glass roof, no electric seats, no displays, no screens, no adaptive suspension. What about a heat pump? Can you imagine it without that? A heat pump is...
No.
We can explain then, for everyone who isn't really into electric cars, that a heat pump is the essential technology used to keep the battery, specifically the electric car battery, at the perfect temperature so that it operates at its most efficient level.
No, I actually want a heat pump. If I'm in Sweden and using the car for long trips in the winter, I really need a heat pump because it cuts down on charging time. I honestly want air conditioning too.
I hadn't written down AC. I was thinking that I want that too. I think people are so...
Yes, it's also a safety issue, I have to say.
Yes.
But we're looking at, we can buy a Leap motor for 350,000. One of these, what are they called then?
B05, right?
B05.
Or B10.
B3, yeah, whatever. More B5, I guess.
It's called B10.
B10. Can buy a Leap motor B10 for 350,000, and it has a lot of these things. Yes. Naturally, things that you might not need, but that you might want to have. Are these certain things? Absolutely remove a lot of what we've said. I definitely believe in that.
But do you think like this, it's one thing when we say that we might have many listeners, many who would read a text about this might read our arguments, saying yes, but I'll sign off on this. And then when they're standing in the car showroom and they're standing next to a car that is our stripped down budget car, our people's car.
The people's electric car.
And then next to it stands one that has a tow bar, bigger wheels, a bit of bells and whistles and everything. And will they still choose that one? Or
they'll probably choose it because people are a bit stupid when it comes to finances. They're happy to take out loans with really high interest rates. They buy on installment plans, and people are so damn spoiled. I mean, people aren't satisfied with what we were satisfied with back in the day. Instead, it has to be better and better, and everything has to be included and checked off and so on. Look at the Chinese market. There, almost all cars have all the equipment. It's impossible to buy a car with base equipment there because everyone wants everything. So it's in human nature to say, give me the stuff. I don't want anything worse than what the neighbor has. Then it can cost a little bit since I'm at it anyway. So quite unfortunately, I think that human nature tends to work directly against the success of our budget car.
yeah, I suppose that is probably true when you really think about it.
Unless you can actually make one of these R4 Labans, make a real people's car, and damn how bold that is. I don't even have a screen in here. I just put my phone up there and use the navigation on the phone instead. I don't have power windows, but I do have AC. That's really all I have in this car, plus ABS. It is just so incredibly basic. That's it. And I think I have a cool car that is much lighter, that is much cheaper. And I think I am much better as a person because I am above all this luxury or frills or silliness, 640 horsepower and head-up display, and this nonsense that is just for sissies who want this.
But it's interesting when you're talking about simplicity and everything anyway. And then I'm thinking about the fact that the EU Commission just put forward a proposal that is currently pending, which they are going to make a decision on, called M1E, which is, well, the E doesn't stand for easy, but it stands for electrified or efficient, perhaps stands for, and M1 is the passenger car convention, that is. And what they have proposed is that the M1E cars, firstly, they must be fully electric, and secondly, they must be smaller. They can measure at most 4.2 meters in total length. They have looked a bit at this Japanese K-car regulation, and the idea is specifically to favor small, affordable cars. Another requirement is that they must be built in Europe. And then they have done this thing, and one can actually question whether the EU has listened a lot to the car lobby or if there is some other thought behind it. And the core issue is that they have operated under the assumption that if you get an M1E car type approved, you effectively freeze the safety regulations for 10 years for it. So they won't need to make any further safety upgrades to that car for that entire period. Even if the general requirements are increased, you won't have to do that. And I don't know, I think this is a bit like, it's an admission from the EU that they are saying we can't build small cars anymore. We can't build those small cheap cars anymore. So that's why we have to change our rules to make it easier for car manufacturers to do this now. Or
I honestly believe that we have gone a bit too far with all these regulations. They make it nearly impossible to produce things at a cost that everyday people can actually afford to buy new. It is becoming a real issue for everyone involved. And to be fair, today's safety standards are already incredibly high, I would say, perhaps even more than we truly need in our daily lives. And if we compare buying a new car now or a 5-year-old car, then it's better to buy a new car now. And even in 7, 8 years, 10 years, maybe it's better to buy the new car than to jump into an old car. If you understand what I mean? So the safety level won't be worse on average for that car. And as far as I understand, this doesn't mean that the manufacturer can't put it in. Yes, now a new thing has come along that prevents you from hitting children in city traffic. They are free to put that thing in if they want to. It might just cost some software, hey and ho, and a little sensor there. And even LiDAR might come down and only cost 300 kroner. Put in LiDAR then. There is no requirement to have a LiDAR, but they can put it in and market themselves by saying we have all the safety features available.
But there is actually a really interesting thing to consider if you happen to remember the classic Fiat Punto. You see, the old Punto was sold on the market without really having any significant generational shift for what I believe was a staggering period of up to 12 years. And it was a 5-star car in Euro NCAP throughout its entire life. Which is strange because when it was tested back then, could it be, this is a car from 2005 maybe, or what?
Yes, something like that.
So it got 5 stars. And then when Euro NCAP wanted to show 10 years later that it actually wasn't that good, so the crash test, and according to those regulations, it didn't get a single star, so things evolve. And then it still ends up being the case that if you freeze a set of regulations, even if the car isn't worse than it is, or worse than other cars, or worse than the regulatory requirements when it was type approved, well, development moves so fast that it will be considered an unsafe car.
Or, yeah, that's how it is. But we are talking about small cars. I still think the level we're at now is just incredibly damn good. Just these cars, a new Twingo today is safer than many larger cars that are 5 years old, thanks to a great many fine systems. I don't think we should, of course, allow people to develop the cars to a certain extent, but at the same time, I really shouldn't be forcing in a whole bunch of extra safety features that might not actually be needed.
But if you look at how the car industry works, they have, they haven't put the more expensive technology into the smaller, cheaper cars because you ruin the margin. And what has forced the technology in is Euro NCAP, or higher laws and regulations.
Absolutely.
So it has become an issue. Then it might become a bit uncomfortable to say that they are cutting corners on safety to maintain the margin. That's how it works in almost every industry. You don't give things away for free. So you're not willing to reduce your profit just to be nice.
No, but it will probably also be like it has been for example, Renault and so on. That sure, I won't bring in this version without this equipment that doesn't manage 5 stars. Stars in Euro NCAP in Sweden, because our brand takes so much damage. So you will do it automatically. because you want to sell the absolute safest thing you can sell to your customers. But then if there is a market in another Albania, if I may say so, that perhaps doesn't have that economy at all, and it is a car that with today's safety is considered very safe, okay, then maybe you can, in that market, perhaps you can say it is a car that is still very safe in comparison to the rest of the population without adding higher requirements.
But are you actually using this discussion we had many years ago? Back when we were looking at older, or perhaps actually simpler cars imported from the West, I remember a specific example, a Volkswagen Polo, I think it was. And interestingly, that same Polo model that was being sold in the Indian market only managed to get 1 or 2 stars in safety ratings.
Yes, that is terrible, of course. But it might have been safer than riding a rickshaw or a moped. That was how a Tata Nano was launched. It was supposed to be so cheap that people would move from 2-wheeled to 4-wheeled vehicles. It is still very unsafe compared to other cars, but safer than these 2-wheeled ones. So getting people up to a higher level at roughly the same cost.
But then we end up in the discussion that if you don't have the money for an expensive car, you have to accept lower safety. That is what I am trying to get at.
That's how it is already today. If you can't afford to buy a car that is 10 years, if you have to buy a car that is more than 10 years old, then you have a much less safe car than the neighbor who has bought themselves a new Volvo. A huge difference.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So it's already like that today. So that, no, I don't buy that.
But if we then look at how we are going to cut the cost of our car, we have to make something worse. And we have accepted, or rather reluctantly accepted, that we can get a shorter range.
I want 300 kilometers in the winter. Then I'm on board somewhere.
The performance, you're on board with that.
I'm removing that.
We don't need to have that. Comfort, how is that?
That I don't need. I mean, it's possible to make good comfort in cars without a lot of electronic suspensions and stuff. But you can, after all, put in a little bit of soundproofing and so on. I don't want to sit and ride in a cart. I don't want to ride in a Model T. I really don't want to do that.
I'm thinking about how many people are installing massage seats. It doesn't cost that much now. So people are putting massage seats in their simple cars. We don't need that.
There is a car in the US that I think is coming out this year, a pickup truck called Slate.
Right.
It has like old school manual window cranks. There's absolutely no display screen at all, so you really have to rely on your phone for everything. Honestly, they've just stripped absolutely everything out of this car to keep it simple. I think it has AC though. It has created a bit of a buzz, and people have invested in the project because they think it's not such a bad idea. We buy a base car, it can work for a lot of people, and you don't need all this fluff. I think it's there, and it's also designed to look a bit tough. It looks a bit unique. I think you can also convert it into different versions and things like that. So make a well-designed, modern, maybe Panda that also looked a bit cool, or whatever it is. Some car with a look that's budget-friendly and strips away all this fluff. I think many would think, yes, a new R4 Laban, absolutely. I think it's sellable. I think so too.
What we're ending up in a bit now is that we're going against what Europe has been good at. Because Europe has been good at, as you said early on, everything has to get better. Everything has to get better. It has to get better. And that is what Europe has done. We have made premium cars out of everything. They have become stronger, more advanced, safer, more expensive. Everything along with it. But in these lower price segments, well, the competition from European car manufacturers has become worse and worse. They don't even exist anymore in certain key market segments that really matter. It is quite a significant shift.
People don't want to buy cheap cars for this reason. Even the Volkswagen Polo and the Up stopped being sold on the Swedish market because people thought it was too poor of a car, or possibly too expensive. But people don't want that small base car, so it disappeared. Now they have brought it back to be able to show that the electric version isn't more expensive or is almost just as expensive. I think that's used as a comparison example if they've brought the Polo back to Sweden. But the big problem in this discussion is that the margin for manufacturing a car with a few bells and whistles is so much. The extra cost to manufacture the car is so little extra. But on the other hand, the margin when you sell the car is so much larger. Europe's automotive industry is built on manufacturing premium cars. They are supposed to be bigger, better, faster, more comfortable. We get all the hype in the world for new Volvos. The EX90 is a dream car, a fantastic car with all kinds of equipment and features. It is fantastic at all these things we have been talking about. That is the one people want. That is the one people are talking about. And that is the type of car that Volvo can make money on. I don't think Volvo wants to deal with small cars like the EX30 because there's no margin left there. That car is very expensive, but they have to discount it for private leasing. Otherwise, no one wants to buy a Volvo like that, which is supposed to charge a premium. Because you can't charge premium prices for small things. Premium has to be big. That's how we work.
Do you mean that Volvo or Volkswagen, Renault, Stellantis, the big European ones, they can't make money on small cars?
Yes.
It's that simple?
Yes.
But is it also in the development work to a large extent that the development organizations have become too big, too expensive, and too slow?
Yes, that has truly been the core of Europe's biggest problem when competing against the Chinese, which is that we have simply taken far too long to develop new things. Consequently, they haven't been able to manufacture these cars efficiently enough, and that is why the Chinese are currently the absolute best at developing quickly and, more importantly, the best at producing everything efficiently and cheaply.
But isn't that really just about having a fundamentally different mindset? And I know that for a fact because I've spent a lot of time talking to both Chinese and Western engineers working right there in China. In China, they are quite good at good enough. I mean, good enough engineering, as it's called. You just make it good enough. You don't make it completely perfect. Whereas in Europe, we are very keen on going all the way, thinking it through completely, doing everything for all corner cases and everything, so that it is truly well thought out. They don't care about that in China.
Absolutely. And they haven't cared about that at Tesla either. And people have been buying Teslas all the way up until he started saying things that not everyone liked.
But that is Europe's big problem. We have talked in previous podcasts about how battery cost, battery technology is a hell of a hurdle for Europe.
Absolutely.
But the cost structure is just as terrible. When we get to the point where in China they develop a car in 2 years, instead of the 4 to 6 years it takes in Europe. Wages and so on. But the cost structure is what kills the cheap European car, maybe not the batteries.
No, I think so too. Definitely. And there are two things I want to talk about here. For one thing, in China, among the best-selling cars are, for example, the GM Wuling. I mean, small cars that cost 70,000 kroner. And then you can live with a range of 15 or 20 Swedish miles. And everything is a bit flimsy. No luxury. Because then we are down to the kind of money that we can sort of... Okay, 70,000 kroner is a lot of money for quite a few people in China. With the wages that if you earn 10,000 kroner a month, then 70,000 is still a significant amount of money. So it's not free over there. But still, so low. A basic car like this in China costs 70,000 kroner, and a really nice car like a Xiaomi would probably cost you maybe around 300,000 kroner. Then I understand there are many who buy this 70,000 kroner car. But could we get there here in Europe, that I could buy a basic car for 70?
Zero. I actually tested this Microlino a little while ago. It is a very clever modern Swiss take on the classic BMW Isetta, or at least that is certainly how it comes across to me.
Yes, I've driven it too.
It's a dreadful car, really.
It costs 3.
Super cute, really fun, incredibly charming, but as a car, it leaves a lot to be desired. It feels more like a fairground attraction, and it costs 350...
Zero SEK. It was just...
bizarre. Completely unsellable. This is what I find interesting. In Europe, if you take the Volvo X30, BMW X1, and all these cars, we have talked a lot about them. They all cost over 500,000, 800,000 SEK. That Europe has aimed to try to beat China in the 700,000 SEK plus class. And there, it's probably completely uninteresting. But it is
interesting.
Yeah, but Europe really needs to learn how to beat the Chinese alternatives in the 200,000 to 250,000 SEK class. That's probably the new trick.
But the margins aren't there, are they? That's probably still the problem. The margins aren't there. Even in China, the sales are of more luxurious electric cars, as they are often called, 9-something, it's going up. Every manufacturer has to have a 9 and a 9L. Then they are really big cars and loaded with just about everything you can imagine. Refrigerators, lots of TVs, the whole works, suspension, 1,500 horsepower and so on. That's where the margin is. The sales volume isn't that big in terms of volume, but that's still where all manufacturers want to be, because that's where the money is. There's no money in these base cars for, say, 220
0 kroner. But you probably know this better than I do, but isn't that for the export market?
Are you referring to the luxury cars?
Yes, you do it like this with luxury cars because they can export. And now I'm not talking about Europe, but rather other parts of the world saying, hey, you can buy a Marsa for the equivalent of 800,000. Or if you'd prefer, you can simply buy a 9-litre option for 400,000. It's really quite a straightforward choice to make. And then everyone will say that, because if you look at developing markets in South America or Africa, there are no European car brands left there that are trying to sell electric cars at double the price. Isn't it for that type? Because, as you say, in China, people can't afford these to any great extent.
Yes, but China is a damn big one of those. Every single one that enters, there is a customer in that niche. There are so many niches in China that there is money to be made for car manufacturers, even in these luxury segments. More than in Europe, I would say. I mean, the real luxury cars, considering the volumes
of people. Aren't all car manufacturers in China now? We shouldn't talk so much about China here, and keep an eye on how to be able to take export shares rather than trying to grow. Yes.
They do, absolutely.
I think even GM, they left China now. Oh, sorry, Chevrolet. The GM brand Chevrolet left China.
Yes, but honestly speaking, we really haven't seen these expensive Chinese cars actually make it or succeed in the European market just yet. It's still quite early to tell. The premium brands have really bombed. What's being sold in Europe from China, it's MG, and it's cheap cars from Chery, Geico, Bud. Those are the cars that are being sold. The nice cars, no, then we buy a BMW, Mercedes, Volvo. If we're going to spend 800,000 kroner, nothing Chinese, if I'm exaggerating.
That's how it's been historically. That's what they're trying to change, isn't it?
They are trying to change that, but it's very difficult. Xpeng has started to gain some market share, but then again, they aren't insanely expensive either. Those are the cars they've managed to get some volume on.
But we're not here to talk about expensive Chinese cars. We're here to talk about the cheap European ones. That was the point.
Forget them. I don't think they'll ever come back.
Yeah, but I argue that we have to get there.
My heart says that would be great.
And now you're going to help the European car industry here. And now you're going to build your People's Aid Village.
All right.
Alrik. I don't know.
Alrik's cars.
Alrik's cars here. Now comes the first model from Alrik's car. Yes. TURE.
Sure, that will be...
I have to say, that is actually really, really good. It will cost 249,900 kroner. Now you have to choose. This is a balance. You won't be able to choose everything.
Can I know what each thing costs?
No, we'll have to try to keep it in our heads.
Roughly. I think it has to be a Golf-sized car. Yes.
A Golf-sized car is what we're thinking. 25, 30 or 40 mil of range.
30, I've said. I maintain that we must manage 30 million, otherwise people will think it's a bad car. We don't want that.
30 million, 100, 120 or 170 horsepower?
The extra cost for 120 isn't much, so I'm fine with 120.
What about fast charging? 80, 120 or 200 kilowatts? And then we can say that the charging times will be 10 to 80% that you charge that. Then it's... So we are looking at 33 minutes for the first part, then that's followed by 25 minutes, and finally there is the last one, which comes in at exactly 16 minutes.
Oh, and a lot of money saved then. This is starting to get interesting. How much cheaper does the car get thanks to these 16 versus 30 minutes? If it's 10,000, then it's definitely 16 minutes. If it's 70,000, then we'll go with this base, then we'll design it so it looks like industrial design, so that the final result looks very simple and distinctly DAS-like. There is nothing fancy-pantsy anywhere to be found, just a completely straightforward and clean approach. Spacious, smart, functional. It should take a bit of courage to drive around in a milling car like this. You can't have two-port charging. I wanted this 120, 200. I wanted this 200 after all.
Okay. Front-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive, or all-wheel drive?
Front-wheel drive is cheapest.
What about wheels? Could you consider a 15-inch?
Yes, absolutely.
18-inch or 20?
15 any day of the week. Cheap, good, and lower rolling resistance. We'll take that.
Which equipment and assistance do you consider? I mean, what technology do you consider absolutely necessary?
AC. As you've said.
ABS. ABS, we consider that you can't get away from that.
ESC.
ABS, ESC, those kinds of things you can't get away from, because those are the basic safety requirements that do that.
I personally believe that having a reliable auto breaker system here in dense city traffic is definitely something that we really want to have.
But that's still the safety requirements.
They can't get away from those.
But what if I throw in something like adaptive cruise control or a regular cruise control?
I can manage with a regular one, absolutely.
I can tell you that I drove 2,500 kilometers in Italy a few weeks ago. Having regular cruise control is terrible. Oh, how annoying it is. I want adaptive any day of the week. It
is clear that I want to, but I have a regular one on my Volvo. And it works very well. I would much rather have the regular cruise control than the Seeker 7 GT I had with adaptive, which was absolutely hopeless to live with. So I just said, no, no, no. I would much rather have something bad that works well than something good that works badly.
Is this just a test, or is it a cooler question?
I'd rather have something that isn't as advanced, that works the way it's supposed to, than something that is very, very advanced, that doesn't work the way I want it to work.
So it's basically like this. AC is the only requirement you have. Is there nothing else?
I don't need power windows either, if I can save money on it.
Phone connectivity? Or phone mirroring?
No, I'll manage with my phone. I don't need a screen. I'll be fine. I'll just mount my phone there. I have my navigation. I can talk to it. I want a Sonos speaker that I can connect my phone to. Fine. I'm done.
Okay. Is there any safety system that doesn't... Now you have to try to imagine the Euro NCAP regulations and say, for those that aren't standard, is there anything you can think of that you could remove? I mean, that isn't standard?
What is it that Euro NCAP they have done? It's clear that the car should be safe. That's how it is, really. But I can't exactly... We have to have the active systems that break if I'm about to drive into something, and if I have a heart attack, then the car should stop by itself. That's something you want help with. So I need the smart technology that is supposed to avoid accidents. I really want help with that. I want that. Yes, but...
Luckily, it turned out to be an exciting car today.
Do you want to buy one? Well, I mean, how much does it cost then?
It's supposed to cost $249,900.
Yes, but if we can get it for that, then I think there is a market for this car.
But you think your cheap electric car, the compromise you've made, they are worth it? People would rather buy this than a 3-year-old larger premium car for about the same money.
I think there's a group. Those are very different mindsets. But I absolutely think there are people who think, I'll buy this TURE and keep it for 8 years. What a genuinely good car I have. I'm going to get such an extremely low operating cost. It requires no service. The insurance will be so damn low because it doesn't have any horsepower. It will have a quarter of the insurance cost of a Tesla. I think people will love that. That will make the resale value of this car cheap to buy. It will hold its resale value much better than those cars that cost 700,000 krona. You drive for a year and lose 200,000. That's almost the entire car's purchase price. So yes, I honestly think there's absolutely a huge bunch of people out there who just really want reliable, good transport and simply don't care about the rest of the details, and they can really enjoy being a little extra smart about their choices.
So there we have it. If the car industry truly learns how to build Alrik's cars, and we as consumers actually learn this lesson, that we might not need to own everything, then we could see a real shift. It is about changing our mindset, i.e., realizing that perhaps we do not need to have it all.
No, and I think that is very important too. In the past, they had longer product cycles. Now in China, they are supposed to update a new car every other year or every year. Zeekr even had 3 updates on one model in a single year. You could buy 3 different model years within one and the same year. And that is just completely insane. How long did a Volvo 140 live? A slightly bigger bumper and a slightly new interior, the 240. It was really the same car back then. I would love it in some way too if we could have cars that lived longer, that became classics, which would lower spare parts costs and spare parts inventory. Everything would be much better if we could just stop updating the cars all the time. It looks like this. This is a good car. We don't need to develop it that much.
But what happens if we now take your electric car for a ride for 250,000 kroner? Do you think people will consider the cheap electric car worth the compromises? Or when they finally get to the dealership, will they still say, no, I don't want it?
People will want more, better, and that's in human nature. There will be a bunch of people out there who will love my TURE. Most people will want luxury, 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 faster, faster, better, better, evolution. Unfortunately. Or unfortunately, that's just how it is. It's not unfortunately. If you have the money, you will go into debt up to your eyeballs because you want the best.
So, just to wrap it all up for you today, the electric cars of the future have to get worse. And the car industry must learn to build simpler. But we consumers must also change. We must learn not to want to drive the whole pick and mix.
Yes. And can the industry make money selling base models? I think that's really fun. Yes.
That was our take on the whole thing. What do you think at home? Are we completely off base? Or are you signing up for the interest list for Alrik TURE?
Yes, do that.
Right, get in touch, comment, say something. Thanks and goodbye.
Thanks, bye.